Okay, we're now live on YouTube for another webinar with Fenestration Canada. So welcome everyone. Today I'm with Derek Brown, who's Chief Information Security Officer for Northbridge and Federated. So I hope I gave the right title. I said
Yep.
your real title here, Derek. So today you're going to talk to us about basically cybersecurity and how to protect and strategies to protect your business. So, without further ado, I'll let you take over. And just want to mention, just want to thank Federated Insurance first and foremost for presenting this webinar. And also, if there's any questions on YouTube, I'll be monitoring that and also on Zoom.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Derek Brown. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Northbridge and Federated Insurance. And I have been so for approximately 6 years or so, and have been building up the security program there. Security is pretty much all I know. So it's about all I can actually talk about. So I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to speak to you about our agenda, and thank you for your time and attention to this. I think by the end of this, I'm hoping that you come out of it with some value, with some understanding of the threat landscape that's out there at the moment, the things that are most scary, especially in 2021. We'll go through some of the events as of this year alone. It's been a busy one. We'll talk about some of the technical bits around ransomware and the attacks that we've seen recently. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the softer things, the softer side of security and the processes that you should be thinking about speaking with your employees on. By the end of it, I want to cover some frameworks and discussion of how you can protect your own company. And these are transferable skills, right? These are things that you should be thinking about in your office, as well as bringing them home to your friends and family so that you can protect not only your business, but your personal activities as well. We'll talk about partners and some options for how to get started. Some options for assessments. We'll look at some frameworks too in particular that are good to start with out of the gate and get you moving in the right direction. And we'll also cover the who. Of course, you may not be experts in security, right? You may not have spent the 30 years of your career looking at security problems. Other people have. There are security professionals out there. They are often hard to find, but when you find a good partner, a good company, or a good employee, they typically have some of the same certifications that I'll talk about at the end here. So that should help you narrow in on who has the right experience for your needs. As we said right at the start, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them either into the chat or speak up. I may go too fast, I may go too slow, I may not expand out on some vulnerabilities that I talk about, or some acronyms that I mentioned. So stop me. It's better that you get the understanding at that time than wait and be confused for a couple of slides until I get back to it. So please, keep me honest here. Like I said, I'm going to start with some things that seem fairly technical to start with, but they're not too bad. I'm going to tell you the story of what's been happening this year so far. It has been crazy. You may have seen in the news SolarWinds right at the top here, the SolarWinds logo, and you'll notice that I got a couple of other logos here of large, prominent security companies, some of which you may recognize, some of them you probably don't. Right? That's okay. When looking at this event, thought I could try and build a set of slides that describe what happened here, and we could spend an hour talking about it. The story is so convoluted and complex. I won't bore you with all of that. What I will tell you is the type of attack that occurred and how they found it, and because those will help you think about why it's important to be secure yourselves. All right, so SolarWinds, big company, they've been around for decades. They provide some software that Northbridge and Federated use, as do Malwarebytes and FireEye and CrowdStrike and Microsoft. All of these companies and about 30,000 other companies in the world used the SolarWinds software. And that software its only purpose, only reason to exist is to monitor other software, is to track the other things that have been installed in our networks and on our computers, make sure that they're running, they're not running out of space, they have enough storage and CPU, memory, and all of those parts of the computer system that each piece of software needs to run. SolarWinds, their software, monitors that and then tells you if you're getting low on memory for some reason. Well, so lots of organizations use it in the back room. You may never heard of it because of that. 30,000 other customers did. And about 18,000 of those customers all suffered a compromise, a breach of their environment by a large, prominent nation state actor, a criminal organization that works for a government. And it hasn't been attributed officially, but common understanding is that this was possibly and probably the Russian government associated group. They broke into SolarWinds network directly. They didn't break into these 4 or 30,000 other customers or 18,000 other customers directly first. They started with SolarWinds and said, we're going to pollute or contaminate the supply chain. We're going to go to SolarWinds, change their software so that when the software at CrowdStrike or FireEye or these other companies reaches back to the head office at SolarWinds to update itself, to get its new patches, that'll happen automatically. Then the malicious code, the contaminated code, will be downloaded into all of those other customers as well. It's like an easy entry into every other customer that SolarWinds had. And of course, they didn't get 100% of them. They got almost 50% of them. And it was very successful. And it happened last year, 2020. Right? We found out about it this year. Right? And as each customer upgraded their software automatically, the nation state actor gained access to their environments too. Microsoft, for example, writes a lot of software. That's their business, a lot of operating systems. And the nation state actor was able to see some of that code directly, things that are intellectual property of that organization. FireEye is one of the world's largest security companies. So is CrowdStrike, Malwarebytes. Those are all security companies. FireEye is probably a little bit bigger and they're probably a little bit more well-known throughout the world globally. And they were the first to discover this breach. And they did it through just regular drudgery, just regular process. There was no fancy Hollywood exciting story around this. What they did was every day they monitor who has access to their network. How many of their employees have assigned or associated a new phone or a new computer to read email on their network? And if they see a new phone being used to read email, they look at it and see if it's suspicious in some way. And a particular day back in January, they saw that a salesperson had associated a second phone to read email from on their network. They thought, that's weird. So they called the salesperson and said, hey, did you just buy a new phone or transport to a new phone? Something happened. We'd like to know. The salesperson said, nope, no way. I'm still using my old one. And that was the key that said, something weird has happened. Somebody has breached that account. And after a few weeks of investigation, detailed investigation, the people at FireEye were able to find out that their instance of SolarWinds had been contaminated through the supply chain attack, and they traced it all the way back. And then they announced it to Microsoft and SolarWinds and CrowdStrike and to the world, and they dealt with it perfectly. They provided all the tools that everyone else on the planet needs to protect themselves against this sort of attack. And they did it openly within hours of announcing it. So terrifying type of attack, very technical in nature and requires great expertise to execute. And that's why they know it was probably a nation state and probably somebody who's been doing it for quite a while. They knew who to attack, they knew how to attack, and they did it expertly. And it generated a lot of work. It generated a lot of work for everybody involved, because once you know that your system has been attacked, just like with the Excellion breach here, I'll talk about in a moment, you want to see if any of your partners have also been attacked, see if they've been compromised, and perhaps they've spread the compromise to you. So it generated a lot of discussion among different organizations that had nothing to do with security, nothing to do with technology. But we want, in the insurance industry, for instance, we asked all of our partners, hey, are you using SolarWinds? Or are you using Excellion? Excellion's a very popular file transfer tool. That's all it does, just transfers files. It allows us to share files with our partners, our brokers, our customers. Great. FireEye uses this tool as well. And you may not even know you're using this tool because it allows you to white label it. It allows you to put your company's logo on the tool so that when your customers come to your site, they see your logo and they transfer files and they trust you. Unfortunately, it had a really easy breach in it. It had a really easy vulnerability to exploit. And unfortunately, it allowed attackers to read any file that had been placed on that particular device or that particular file transfer server. And take a copy of it for themselves, which in some industries is very scary, especially if we're dealing with insurance claims, for example, right? So Northbridge did not, and Federated did not have this particular tool, but some of our partners did, right? So we had to take another effort, take another couple of days out of our lives to ask each of our partners, hey, are you using this Excellion product? Are you using partners that are using this? And were you compromised? Was any of our data compromised? Right? It triggers that hunt for people who have been compromised and alternatives to the solution. Right? This is only March, and we've had yet a third massive media frenzy around security within the world, throughout the world. This month, March 2nd, Microsoft released a patch. The patch is an update to their software, update to their computer operating systems, and in this case, it was for their Microsoft Exchange mail server. Everybody uses email, and the vast majority of organizations in the world, I think it's safe to say, use Microsoft email for their corporate email. And on March 2nd, Microsoft decided that it was important enough that they announced a week early that they had 4 vulnerabilities in their mail server software, that they needed everyone on the planet to patch immediately. And they were so serious because they were so easy to exploit. An attacker who had begun to exploit these back on January 6th, while the rest of us were watching on TV the Capitol buildings being overrun, a nation state, a large nation state actor, commonly attributed to Chinese government, but not officially, was using these 4 problems in Microsoft Exchange to attack government organizations in the US. Right? And as January turned to February, they accelerated that. They started trying to attack other organizations that were outside of the government, institutions and large companies, for example. And by March 1st, they'd attacked and compromised 20,000 customers of Microsoft using this particular set of vulnerabilities. Right? Microsoft released their patch early, a week early than they normally would have. And they released all the tools you would need to detect if you had already been compromised. And because we know that there was an acceleration of the type of attack up to the release of the patch, we believe that whoever the attacker was, they knew that the patch was coming. So they were trying to capture as many vulnerable systems as they possibly could. Right? 20,000 companies within the US alone, that's not even counting those outside the US, in Canada and Europe and South America, for example. Right? It's been a busy year, and this generated a lot of sleepless nights. From March 2nd to March 3rd, everyone was up fixing their email servers, making sure they were properly patched and had no vulnerabilities available. And if you ran the scripts and saw that there was a breach of your system prior to March, you then had to go contain that and expunge those attackers out of your environment. And a lot of organizations don't have that skill set in-house, right? We have to go out and pick good, reliable partners like FireEye or CrowdStrike or Malwarebytes, even Microsoft, to help us with that. And when Microsoft released this, their phone lines lit up. It was hours to try and get somebody on the line at Microsoft to help you resolve this problem if you had been breached. Luckily, Northbridge had not been, Federated had not been, or in good order, but many other organizations didn't get the opportunity. right? So those are three just simple instances of technical vulnerabilities that are largely outside of your control because they were so late in announcing them. They're what's known in the security world as a zero day. You had to act immediately. You had to be ready to say, my vendor has just announced this problem. Now I have to act and patch immediately. All right, there's nothing you can really prepare for. Whereas in the topic of social engineering, you can be proactive. You can get ahead of the attacker and be prepared for when those attacks start to arrive. So social engineering, what's that? Well, typically, and I guarantee every one of you has seen some sort of this in the past. It's a phishing email, right? It's a phishing email, or maybe it's an SMS message to your phone. Maybe it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or some social media platform. Somebody trying to get you to do something you normally wouldn't do. Give up some information about yourself or your company that you shouldn't do, right? Often when a phishing email arrives in your email account, it'll have a link on it in it that they want you to click, and it'll bring you to a site that the criminal owns, and it may install some malware onto your computer, or it may just ask you to enter some data like your name and your passwords to compromise your name and your password and give it to the criminal. That's the easiest sort of attack. Requires no technical capability, no special tools, just send you an email, drive you to a website, and ask for your name and password, and it's effective. It's effective 12% of the time, most of the time. Right? And if I send out an attachment as a criminal, as an attacker, if I send an attachment to people love opening attachments. They do it without even reading the emails. They'll just immediately click on that Word document, click on that Excel document, especially if the email says something like, this is a past due invoice that you have to pay today. Oh, I better take a look at that invoice and see what it's for. See if I have paid it. Check it out, right? It's compelling. It's an emotional response. I owe money. Oh no. And when you tie some highly emotional current media event to your phishing attack, like a COVID-19 vaccine or the spread of the COVID pandemic across the world, people will almost certainly take a look at whatever you send them. They'll click on that link to go to the false website, or they'll open the attachment. Right? You see at the top here, when those phishing attacks are successful, most of the time, they'll reveal some data to the criminal that they can use for the next step of the attack. What are your partners? Who does wire transfers within your organization? Who should I target next to try and steal money from your company? Right? Or they'll try and get your credentials, your names and your passwords to prominent sites or to your corporate site, your business. And the third one, ransomware infection. 47% of the time, a phishing attack will have a successful phishing attack will install ransomware. Ransomware is fairly technical, though the ability to spread it has become much easier over the last few years. It's essentially the attack on your computer so that it encrypts everything that you care about and hides it from you. And at the end of the encryption process, the attacker will kindly prompt you with a note saying, please pay X number of dollars to this address as soon as possible. Right? Now, if you flip that percentage around and you look at it, well, ransomware, how many ransomware attacks start with phishing? It's about 90%. Right? So phishing attacks are the key mechanism, the key way that a criminal will try and install ransomware in your environment and extort money out of your bank account into theirs. Right? And it's effective, right? 12% of the time, broken down by industry here. You know, who's failing most? Well, maintenance and facilities people, they'll click on a link, they'll open an attachment, they're expecting a lot of attachments perhaps, and they will, fall for the phishing attack, and thus 50% of the time, 47% of the time, end up with ransomware on their system. Right? Purchasing and information technology, those are people who were targeted back since 2015, 2016. They're old hands at this. They know that some of these emails are phishing emails, and they'll recognize them quicker. Right? So be cautious. So let's talk about ransomware a little bit. Now we know how it gets to you. Let's talk about what it actually is. Right? Ransomware is that extortion attack where your data that you care about on your computer is encrypted. I've said that. Right? Comes from social engineering attacks like phishing attacks. And more, it's evolving. It's evolving so that the criminal will not only encrypt your data and hold it away from you so that you have to pay them to gain access to it, but they will also steal the data first. They'll take a copy of it. That happened to a company called Travelex in the UK, a currency exchange company in 2019. Attackers broke into their environment, stole their customer data, a lot of financial data. And then on New Year's Eve 2019, they encrypted all of their computers and took them offline for weeks and months, and said, will you pay us $6 million and we'll give you back the keys to your data so you can get it. And we won't sell the data that we've stolen, right? And ruin your reputation. And rumor has it, they paid a couple of $1 million, they negotiated it, and they paid something. And that's the point here. In 2019, 33% of organizations globally would pay the ransom, right? And of those, 69% of the people who paid the ransom would get their data back on the first try. You notice that green sliver there, that 2%, they would get their data back when the criminal asked the second time for more money. It's extortion, they're criminals, right? You pay them once and they're gonna say, hey, this is working for us. We better ask for more money. And in 2019, they would ask 2% of the time. In 2020, they realized this was a way to make a lot more money than just asking for one batch of cash. And it went up to 32%. 32% of the ransomware attacks demanded multiple instances of getting paid, right? I guess one silver lining out of this is that purple segment there, the 22%, that decreased, right? So if you were going to pay for a ransom, or pay the ransom for your data, then you had a better chance of actually getting your data in 2020. So these are numbers: 33%, 34% of the people who will pay the ransom to get their data back because they were unprepared, because they didn't have backups, because they didn't have a way to detect and stop ransomware before it got too far. In Canada, it's worse. If you isolate the numbers just down to Canada, 42% of us will pay ransom to do it. It's easy for me to sit here and say, don't pay the ransom, but don't pay the ransom. You're funding a criminal organization. You're funding possibly terrorists, right? Money launderers and drug dealers. So I would encourage you, if at all possible, don't pay the ransom. Be prepared. We'll talk about how to be prepared in a few minutes. Okay? Ransomware is terrifying in a lot of ways. It's extortion on a cyber level, on an information security level that a lot of people already feel helpless with, or unprepared to deal with their computers on a day-to-day basis. Then throw in a criminal act like this, and it raises the emotional stakes hugely. It's unplanned work. Anything you were working on that week, when the ransomware notice pops up on your screen, that's it. That's all you're focused on, recovering that. And you're engaging your IT people, your technical people, possibly new forensic partners and friends that you never knew you needed or wanted are now involved in your life. You're paying them a lot of money, and you're trying to get this problem solved before it gets further out of hand and you lose more data and reputation, right? It could cause physical damage to your servers, right? The criminals are encrypting things very quickly, fast, intensely on your computers. That heats up the internal workings of your computer and can shorten its lifetime. It means you have to find your backups. Do you have backups? Do you have a daily backup? Is your last backup 2 weeks old, so that if you get hit with ransomware today, you're going to lose all the data between now and the last backup, which was 2 weeks ago? That's a problem. How do you recover that? That's money lost right there. And if you don't have if you do have the backups, even, can you recover from them? Are they valid? Are they good, resilient backups that you can recover from, or will they fail when you try and recover? Test them. My message there is, if you're doing a backup, whether it's daily or weekly or both, every time you do a backup, test some of them. Make sure that they all work. Eventually, over time, test them all, but test some of them weekly so that you at least know that you're not wasting your time doing the backups. And if you don't have the backups, then you're probably going to be engaging one of these forensics partners, right? I list here number 3, right? And they are people who are highly skilled in recovering data or negotiating ransoms for you. And you pay them a lot. They're the last ditch effort for helping you out in an incident. And it's urgent. So you're going to be willing to pay more. Sometimes it's $400 an hour. Sometimes it's $700 an hour. Somewhere in there, you are paying something considerable. You also have to make sure you're putting time aside and effort aside to get your media communications ready, because this may go into the paper. You have to think about how you're going to communicate to your employees and your partners as well. Because if you are delivering services to your partners and your computers go down and you're not able to deliver that service any longer, well, then there may be legal costs as well, because you have a contract and that contract may be breached. Right? You may have cyber insurance that you have to consider. And if none of those other things work, if you're not prepared at all for ransomware, you don't have the backups, then you're probably looking at paying the ransom, unfortunately, right? Or starting from scratch, starting clean, which may not be an option at all, right? Especially for your customers who are relying on you to deliver the service, right? So you will hit some reputational harm here as well. You'll have to communicate clearly and cleanly to your customers. If you have their private data and you lost their private data, whether it's credit card information or addresses and names and et cetera, you're going to have to protect them from identity theft from the criminals, right? So you'll have to engage TransUnion or Equifax or one of the credit bureaus to protect and freeze your customers' credit information. That's not a must. You don't have to, but it's becoming more and more the common response to repairing things with your customer and repairing their reputation. Right? Ransomware is not a joke. It is difficult to manage. It's better to manage it before it happens than after, right? And a little while ago, we did a survey. I think this is from this is an external survey. This is one of our marketing departments, but ESET did a survey and looked at who in the small business world is doing what to protect themselves. And almost everybody you see down at the bottom here, passwords. Everybody has a password on their account. They have antivirus. 71%. A lot of them have firewalls as well. Those are the table stakes. That's the basic things you should have in place. You must have in place today, right? But phishing and ransomware, the two things you need to be doing right now is to make sure that your employees know about this problem. They know how to detect ransomware or phishing attacks, and they know how to stop them in their tracks, prevent them, right? In the event that the attacker is after your credentials, after your name and password for accounts at your company, this two-factor or two-step authentication is the best technical control you can put in place. It means that you can't log in to get your email or into your file systems or into your network without knowing your name, your password, and having a special 6-digit number on your cell phone as well. Right? So you have two things that are going to identify who you are. Right? You have your name and the two other items. An attacker steals your password by getting your employee to click on a link and entering it into another website. Well, they don't have that employee's phone, so they're stopped there. So two-factor authentication is very valuable in protecting against phishing attacks that steal credentials. Employee awareness is the best possible control, because you have to train your employees on how to make their judgment call of whether they should click a link or not. Even telling people to hesitate, pause, ask the people around them if they've also received a phishing email or an email like this. That's too good to be true. That reduces the success rate of the criminals hugely. We have seen in general, a decrease from approximately 27% success rate for clicking on links down to single digits, down to 6, and in some cases 2 and 0% of people clicking on links once employees have the tools at hand to be aware of what a phishing email looks like. Right. So my key message here is engage a partner and buy some learning management system modules, or get some people talking to your organization, your company, your family, your friends about what it takes to detect and find these things. And I'll touch on them briefly in a few moments. Right. So these things are coming at us, right? These are threats that come at us from all over the place, and they come both in the technical world and the non-technical world. In the technical world, you have misconfigurations. You've taken your computers, or your IT group has just turned on your computers, installed them out of the box, and not done any secure configuration for them, right? Those are things that can be fixed, right? Make sure that as you have new computer systems brought online, that they're hardened. They're configured securely before you turn them on to the evil internet, into the untrusted world of the internet. Make sure that they're patched. Make sure that the patches from Microsoft and Adobe and other places, other software that you're using, are all installed before you put that computer in somebody's hands for use, so that there's the fewest number of vulnerabilities on that computer. right? And of course, the technical risks also involve malware, malicious software. Malware is what's behind ransomware or remote access Trojans that allow remote attackers to reach into your computer and steal it, or use bots, which allow criminals to use a whole farm of computers across the world to attack a single computer somewhere else and deny its ability to operate by just flooding it with too much information, right? Those are all technical things that can be addressed through making sure you're configuring things correctly and you're patching things correctly and you're engaging the right people to test that that has happened. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Non-technical side of things, well, you got to worry about insiders. You, your employees, your partners, other people that come into your environment around you, they may cause you grief in terms of security, right? They may leave sensitive information exposed inadvertently or deliberately. They may try and take information, your intellectual property. You have to be monitoring for some of that. Right? And your partners are essential, right? They bring us the skills and the capabilities that we don't have ourselves to succeed in our business. You have to have them, but you also have to make sure that if they get compromised, if they click on a link and compromise their accounts and start sending you emails, that spread of malicious activity doesn't take advantage in your environment as well. So monitoring your partners and asking them, hey, do you do security awareness training as well as what we do? That's really important. All right. The goal ultimately is to be able to detect an issue within your environment within a minute. And that seems like a very short period of time. It can't be done always by a human, right? A human judgment can detect a phishing email that arrives, but some of the technical issues that you have to have technical controls in place for that. You have to go buy software that's going to look for bad things in your environment, right? So you want to detect it within a minute. You want to understand if that is really bad and malicious in your environment in 10 minutes, and you want to be able to get working on solving that problem within 60 minutes. If you can get that 1-10-60 rule in place, you're ahead of 90% of the world, but you'll also be protecting yourself against things like ransomware spreading throughout all of your systems in the environment. Okay. Organizations like Capital One, large bank in the States, they do some work here with that in Costco, with credit card in Costco in Canada. They are not exempt from being attacked, right? An insider threat example here from last year was that they worked with Amazon Web Services to install and migrate a lot of their business to the cloud, into the Amazon data centers, rather than trying to buy computers themselves. Let's get Amazon to do all that grunt work for us. And they did a great job at it. It was successful. They had a project, all of their systems were moved to Amazon, and one of the Amazon employees left the organization. And she wasn't very happy when she left. She wasn't very happy with Capital One. She broke into their network because she knew all the ins and outs. She was highly technical. She knew exactly what to exploit to get Capital One data, and stole all the Capital One data that had just been migrated into Amazon's data center. She was smart enough to do that, but was not smart enough to keep her mouth shut. And within 2 days, she was bragging about it on the internet and arrested 2 days later, right? But it's the highly trained and trusted people in the environment that have the greatest access, right? And if she hadn't have talked about it herself, maybe Amazon or Capital One would have been able to find her through some investigation. But trying to stop that and train your employees early is a better situation. Take your employees and see what access they have. Send them on vacation, put them in another job, send them out of the office for a little while, and see what breaks, right? What process is not going to work because Brent left the office for a day or went on vacation for a week, right? What falls apart? That's an area where you have to improve. You have to get 2 people looking at that process so it doesn't break next time. You have a backup, cross-training is in place. And it's not the entire security or capability of your business is not reliant on just one person, one Brent, right? And remove access when it's not necessary. Remove access from people who move between positions, right? If you move from one part of finance, accounts payable to accounts receivable, then they don't necessarily need to have the continued access to those accounts payable activities, right? That's where wire fraud occurs and wire transfers and bank accounts get changed, right? We have, for example, experienced partner problems where one of our accounts payable clerks received an email from Todd at a partner that we worked with for years, trusted. Todd was great. Every month he'd send us an invoice and we pay it. They provided great service. It was wonderful. 1 month, the invoice came in from Todd and it said, please pay your invoice on time. And oh, here's the new banking information that we need you to update. And our employee looked at it and said, that's strange. They haven't changed their bank account in years. And the new account is a personal account, not a corporate account. And she emailed back to Todd and said, hey, can you confirm that this is correct? And Todd emailed back within a minute, literally under a minute, and said, yes, absolutely. It is the right bank account. Please make the change immediately. And please pay this today. It's really urgent that you pay your invoice. Our employee said, this is not right. This is not Todd talking here. That's not how he behaves. And she picked up the phone. She called Todd at the partner site. And Todd was frantic. Todd was in a situation where criminals had taken over his entire email server and were contacting all of his clients and sending fake invoices with new banking information and trying to get his customers to pay into the criminal's account. All right. He said, whatever you do, don't pay, just wait. We'll sort this out next month, next week, but we're just trying to get this under control. This is an excellent example of a success story that the employee did exactly the right thing. They did not trust the emails that they were receiving because they thought it might be compromised. They thought they might be talking to the criminals, and they were right. They picked up the phone. They used an out-of-band means of communication. They picked up the phone and talked to a human being and used their own judgment on that. All right. So always fall back to the tried and tested. So in terms of social engineering and phishing attacks, because they account for such a high number of ransomware attacks, and if not ransomware, a compromise of your email system through, somebody getting a name and password, is important that your employees know some of these basics. Right? When an email comes in, they got to question every email and ask, is this under the right context? Do I expect this email from this person in this way at this time? Does Todd send me this invoice with new banking information every month? Or does that even make sense for Todd to do? Question it. Hover your mouse over the links in every email to see if you click on that link, will that bring you to where you think it will bring you? Will it bring you to that customer's or that partner site or that other site that it says it will bring you to? It may not. You don't have to be an expert in URLs or domain names or links, link formation, but you should be able to look at it and understand if I click on a link that says it's going to take me to Royal Bank or TD Bank and I hover over it and the pop-up box tells me I'm going to evildomain.ru, that's not the same as Royal Bank, right? And that's enough to make you pause. May not be phishing email, but you shouldn't click on that link. Do your own typing. If the email comes in or the social media link comes in and the logo is wrong or distorted or the wrong color, the placement's not right, spelling and grammar are wrong, those are all indications that an amateur put it together. Large organizations spend lots of money on smart people to communicate to their customers professionally every time, and they don't make simple grammar mistakes or simple spelling mistakes. So pay attention to that. Now, criminals are getting better. In 2015, 2017, bad grammar was an indicator that this was a criminal. These days, they're getting better as we get better at detecting phishing emails, going from 25% down to 6%, 5%. They're getting better because they know they have to get more sophisticated. Also, be cautious with attachments. Don't just open them from your email, drag them to your desktop, let your computer decide if it's legitimate or not. Give it a couple of seconds, open it cautiously. If you're not expecting it, don't open it. If it's in your junk mail, definitely don't open it. It went to your junk mail for a reason. It's probably junk. Unless you're 100% sure that that email is important to you and that you were expecting it, don't open it. Just leave it in your junk mail. It'll go away eventually. And when you get this deck a little bit later, you'll see a great example of phishing in that link down the bottom. I won't do it right now for the sake of time. So important part here, protecting your company. We're going to talk about each of these in turn, right? But essentially know what you have, know what your risks are, practice good security hygiene, keep your systems up to date, and know what to do when the inevitable happens, all right? So know what you have, document your assets, make a list on paper, write it down, or put it in Excel and print it out, but have it separate, because if you get hit with ransomware, you're probably not going to have access to that information later, right? Or if it gets stolen, you're not going to have access to it. So know your assets, know what versions of software you're using, when it was last patched, keep track of that. There are tools out there that will do that for you. Invest in them and use it. Have external qualified individuals come to your organization and test things for you, both technically and non-technically. right? A technical security test will test your network, will test your computers, and tell you how easy it is for them to break into your environment. And then they will also tell you exactly how to fix it. Do that. It will save you time and money in the long run. And another set of security professionals should be engaged, maybe from the same company, maybe from somewhere else, that can come and talk to your people about employee security awareness. They can look at the processes in your company to see who's allowed to make wire transfers, who's allowed to update bank accounts, are they properly trained, are the processes in place that will document those changes so that you can find out when the breach occurred, right? And monitor threat feeds. What does that mean? That means, you're paying Microsoft and Google and Amazon for their services already. They have a ton of good information available to you. Read it. It's on their websites. Talk to your person that you bought the Microsoft software from, and they will help you get that information about security and what you should be paying attention to. Read the emails. Sign up for the emails that tell you that there's a breach coming at you on March 2nd and you have to patch within 24 hours. That's how they communicate, and they do it well. Pay attention to it. It's worth it. If you can't pay attention to it personally, pay somebody to pay attention to it for you, right? Know what's likely to happen if you do get breached, right? You know how your computers are laid out, know where your sensitive data is, where's your customer data? If that computer got compromised and had all your customer data on it, who would you have to notify? Privacy commissioner? Police? Which police? In what country, in what province, etc. Patch everything regularly. Use the auto update feature if you want, but make sure that you are ensuring that your systems are up to date. Configure everything securely as you can. That may not be your expertise. That's why you're going to engage that other party to test things for you and then recommend how you should configure things. It's worth the money, it's worth the time. If you install an operating system from anybody, from Microsoft, Apple, or anyone, and put it on a computer and plug that into the untrusted network, you will be compromised in under 15 minutes, guaranteed. You have to have those things properly configured. They're not configured securely by default in all cases. All right, back up your mission critical stuff to a different system, right? If your website is essential to you and your mission, and your sales are all through that website, back it up so that if it gets taken down by a criminal, you can bring it up again very quickly. And don't back it up to the same machine that it's on, right? Take your web server and put it on back it up to a file and put it in a different computer. Put it on a disk, on a tape, on something, somewhere else in your environment. Copy it up to the cloud in an account that only you have access to, so that when the bad thing does happen, you can recover directly from that very quickly. And test it. Make sure that it is a valid backup. Not that you did the backup, that's only half the job. Make sure that you can restore the backup and it works exactly as you hope it does. Do that regularly, right? And when a crisis does occur, whether it's a real crisis or just a suspected crisis, know what you're going to do, know who you're going to call, right? Have a plan, have the tasks assigned to the right people within your company who have the right skills, right? Have your IT people prepared to be able to find the backups that you need and recover them. And know the phone numbers of your lawyer, of your incident response partner. If at all possible, talk to an incident response partner now, whether that's a Microsoft recommended company or somebody else that you know in the IT world or recommended by your IT company. Get to know that person and with their phone number and their email address right now so that you're not scrambling for it later when you're in a highly emotional state, worried about whether your customers are all going to flee. And plan how you're going to communicate that, right? Talk to your customers, talk to your employees, talk to your partners. If you have other shareholders or stakeholders, plan what you're going to say to them throughout a crisis. You're going to notify them that something bad has happened, and you're going to tell them more on a regular, hourly, daily basis after that. Have that planned out so that it's not a surprise. You're not trying to figure it out during the middle of a crisis. All right? I'll go through partner risks fairly quickly. I did touch on it earlier, right? You have to think about what tasks your partners are doing for you and ensure that you're asking them the tricky questions that I've brought up here. You're asking your partners those later, right? make sure that you have a process in place where they have to answer some questions about how they do security. It doesn't have to be the 48 questions that I ask my partners. That's not appropriate for you. Your organization probably cares about different things than I care about. So ask them whether they're doing security awareness training with their employees. Everybody should be doing that. Do they have the passwords of the firewalls and the antivirus that you have in your environment that I mentioned in the earlier in the deck? Everybody should have that foundational security stuff in place and operating well. Right? Make sure that your partners are protecting you and your data and your customers' data as well as you do. Your customers trust you to protect their data. Make sure your partners are doing the same. Right? So how do you do that? I've given you, I've told you to do a lot of things in the last 40 minutes. How do you actually get those all done? Well, there's frameworks out there. There's documents out there that are published largely by governments and nonprofit organizations that will guide you through the top 8 things you should be doing. And the Australians are really good at this. They're usually in privacy and security, they're often ahead of the rest of the Western world in thinking and publishing what should be done. And the Australian Signals Directorate, which is like the NSA or the Canadian Security Establishment, the CSE, they've published a couple of years ago, the Essential 8. These are the 8 things that if you do, you'll protect yourself at least 80% of the problem 80% of the time, your security problems will be addressed by doing these 8 things. And they break it down into 3 tiers, right? Are you doing each of these partly, mostly, or completely, fully aligned, right? And your target is to get fully aligned on all of these. You should be making sure that only good known applications run in your environment. Your employees can't just install Candy Crush on every phone and every laptop, right? You're patching things, which means you're updating them. You're not allowing Microsoft Office macros to run. Again, it's a technical detail, but there's lots of good information on the internet, and your IT people will know how to stop that from happening. Your applications are hardened and your operating system is patched and hardened. Yeah, it's multi-factor authentication. That's what I talked about earlier about 2-factor authentication, using your phone and a password to log into systems and daily backups. Right? Also, number 5 there is really important. How many administrators do you have in your company for computers? Who can log into their computer as an administrator with full control over everything? That's a dangerous activity. Very few people in your company should have that level of control over your environment, and you should monitor that. So that's 8 things you can do. Simple, good start, good way to start. Work on those, knock them off, and improve. There's this other one, this Center for Internet Security, CIS. The CIS top 20 are 20 things, not 8, 20. A little bit more elaborate, but it's still understandable by mere mortals. You can get through these, and it's not get them done in March, it's get them done every March, every year. Work on each of these throughout the year for the rest of your life. That's what security is about. It's not just about getting it done all at once. And these 20 things, I won't go through them all here, but these 20 things cover the vast majority of security operations and security capabilities that you should have in place. Some of them require you go out and buy a tool and install it everywhere to make sure it happens, or a tool that you install in one place and everything reports to it is in number 6, right? You want to have a central place for all of your information to come together. Who's logging in? How many people are logging in to that one account? Only one should be. If you have 6 people logging in from one account from all over the world, chances are that account has been compromised, right? But like I said earlier, know what you have, numbers 1 and 2. Know what assets you have in terms of hardware, what computers, phones, networks, Bell and Telus communication lines, et cetera, and know what software is using those and installed on those computers, right? Make sure you have boundary defenses, things like that are described in the document fully as actually have a firewall. Make sure you have boundaries and segmentation in your network. Each of these 20 items is described in a document. If you just go Google CIS Top 20, you'll get a document called the CIS Top 20, version 7.1 as of today, and it will break down how you can address each of these 20 items. And you don't have to do them all perfectly at once. There's 3 tiers. You can work in tier 1 if you don't have anybody focused on security and you only have a small budget, a small amount of money to spend, then work on each of these 20 items in the tier 1 column. And they'll give you 20 or so or 30 things to do. And that's for small businesses. If you have a little bit more money and somebody assigned to think about security, then you work in tier 2. And if you're a large organization with a team of people thinking about security, you work in tier 3. It's targeted towards different sizes and styles of companies so that you can be successful with your security program without having to reinvent the wheel or figure all this out for yourself. So I'd highly recommend you go get the CIS Top 20 document and just read through it one Friday night when you got nothing else to do. Yeah. And I'll end with quickly, who's going to do this for you? Resourcing, right? You may not be in a position to go out and hire that dedicated person so that they will run your security program for you. Many organizations did not and do not. But when you do find a partner or a part-time security professional to assist you, they should have the right experience. And that means they either have a university or college degree in information security. Those are now popular. In the last 5-10 years, they exist. 30 years ago, they didn't exist. So we had to suffer our way through certification programs like the ones from ISC squared or ISACA, those are the names in brackets there. They have certificates like the CISSP, the Certified Information Security System Professional, and the CRISC and the CISA, which are audit and risk type certifications. So they're certifications that train the professional, the individual, to think about security in a certain way, whether from an audit point of view or risk point of view or systems point of view. And there's other variants. But if you're talking to a partner or an employee that has these certifications or one or some mix of them, you know that they have a certain amount of experience. They have 5 years experience in some cases and 3 in others. They know how to write a 6-hour exam, which is really not a great skill, but still, they put the effort into writing that exam and training and practicing for it. And for the CISSP, for example, they know security in 8 different ways. They know about security in human resources or in cryptography or in operations or in communications. They know about security from a variety of different perspectives, and that might be helpful for you, all right? They're not cheap. Those people have spent time and effort to attain those certifications and spend the time to do it. And in some cases, they can't even get that certification without another security professional vouching for them, that they did in fact do that work. So if you're investing time and money in hiring or engaging a security professional, make sure you're doing it with somebody who has put the effort in themselves and is recognized as such, right? And these people should know those frameworks, the CIS Top 20, the Australian directorates, signals directorates, Essential 8, the NIST, NIST cybersecurity framework, whatever framework is appropriate for your industry and your particular company, they should be able to bring and recommend the right set of steps for you. So we've talked about quite a lot here, right? We talked about the threat landscape. We talked about the different types of risks and threats coming at you, some social engineering and ransomware, fear, hopefully instilled in you a little bit. And the goal here is that you're a little bit more paranoid than you were previously, that you're thinking about security every time you get that email, every time you get that invite on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you're considering, is this the best thing for me to click on or open this attachment? Should I pause and hesitate and evaluate it a little bit more or ask for help? So I'll end it there. We have a few minutes for questions. If there's any, I'm happy to field them now or perhaps later if you want to reach me at that email address. Okay? And I'd like to end by saying thank you for your time and your attention on this. I really enjoyed doing it.
So let me have a look. Thanks a lot, Derek. Let me have a look to see if we have some questions here. I don't see any on YouTube. There's no raised hand in the chat here. But as you said, your email is there. We're gonna leave that presentation also available on the marketplace, probably also on our YouTube channel. So I expect to get some emails in the next few days, weeks, and months. So
that's great.
Thanks a lot, and I hope we'll be able to talk again. You know, like we spoke about a year ago or so, a little less than that. So I think just reviewing what happened this year and what's going to happen this upcoming year will be of value. So thanks again. Thanks to Federated Insurance for that presentation, and thanks for everyone on the line today. Thank you.